Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Shavis, Pedig Beis, Halacha Hey, Halacha Vav, and Halacha Zayin. We left off on Daf Yud Zayin on the third line, at the end of the third line from the top of the Amid. And now we're going to conclude the sugya of Pul HaMitzri vis-a-vis the Braisa of Sheish Midos Amru Chacham Bepul HaMitzri, and how we apply the Braisa concerning the dinam of Shemitah in a scenario where someone planted Pul HaMitzri on the seventh year. Now, I want you to know that even though when someone plants anything on the seventh year, Midrabanan, there is a penalty that item has to be uprooted. Yaakov, we already learned that together. Nevertheless, if it wasn't uprooted, we're going to follow the Shita of the Rambam. We'll learn our Sugya Kishita Sa Rambam that if it wasn't uprooted, it is, yes, allowed to be eaten. And that will be the topic of the final application of the Braisa by the dinam of Shemitah. In other words, that even though when it came to the dinam of Maisres, to the determinant of what year, we said that if rule number 3 and 5 and 6, that if a person who planted the Pul HaMitzri from the outset had both intentions, the rule there by Maisres, with all of the other nuances, it has to come to a third before Rosh Hashanah. It could not be fully ready by Rosh Hashanah, that everything goes after the Hashrasha. That means even the greens go after the Hashrasha, the year L'Sha'avar. Nevertheless, as we started to learn yesterday, by Shemitah, B'negei Adinei Shemitah, we do not say that. We don't say that. We separate the Zera and the Yerek. We're going to have an application of how Shvius is different from Maisres, L'Kula, as we will see in the final little discussion before Halacha Vav. And now, today, we're going to move on to the sixth Halacha to the new Mishnah, which is going to introduce the following, that even though we learned so already, that vegetables are tithed by the determinant of Lekita. And the reason for that is because they keep on growing from the current waters. So therefore, the Mishnah is going to say a halacha that's going to be based on the following, that if an interruption of the water happened, as we'll explain, no more water for a certain amount of time, then we will change the determinant of these vegetables, and they're going to go after the hashrasha, as we have been learning by Pul HaMitzri. Now, B'chlal, another very important key to understanding the Mishnah Halacha Vav, that vegetables are considered to be a product of the year in which they are picked only if they require constant watering. And therefore, certain vegetables, B'chlal, very few of them, that do not need constant watering, that their determinant will be, like by the rice, like by the millet, it's going to go after the hashrasha. That will be a big yesod that we're going to learn in Halacha Vav, and God willing, we'll continue today learning Halacha Zayin. Halacha Zayin is going to move away from Pul HaMitzri. We're going to move into the gourds. How much did we have already about the gourds? Gourds are normally considered a product of the year that they were picked, right? Because they are normally considered a vegetable. But when gourds are fully mature and the farmer leaves them on their vine, what will begin to happen to those gourds is that they will shrivel up. The farmer will only allow for that to happen if he's not planning to eat them, if he only wants them for their seed. So by a gourd, the farmer leaving it on the vine, demonstrating that he wants just to plant them, that will also change their determinant, as we'll see in the Mishnah. And finally, in Halacha Zayin, we're going to get into greater detail about the following. Number one, that other than the 4 explicit prohibitions in Parshas Bahar, generally, all of the agricultural farming activities that are asur on Shvi'is are only asur midrabanan. However, watering, which should also l'chura only be asur midrabanan, watering is something that in some cases we will be very lenient with, because there is a tremendous importance for water. And certain products, if they don't get water, they will get ruined. And as we will see, and the ubemela, watering to enhance growth will be asur midrabanan on the Shemitah year, but watering simply to prevent a product of getting ruined will be in many cases mamish mutar lechatchila as we will see in the Mishnah. Chevra Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, again 3 lines from the top by the dot, by the end of the line. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara. Again, we are applying the Sheish Midos Omru Chacham Pula Mitzri that the Braisa speaks about Maisres, how we apply them for Shvius. And what we learned yesterday was one Nekuda, that rule 3 does not apply for Shvius, more or less. We don't join together the Zera and the Yerek. Yes, there is an issue of Marasayin. Yes, as we finished learning yesterday. But really, for Shvius, we separate them. So now let's apply that lekula in the next case. That if Zera'i Lezera, if you planted it for its seed, Lifnei Rosh Hashanah, Hasheminis, that's rule number 1. Are you allowed to plant on Shemitah? No, you violated an Isur Doraisa. Do you have to uproot it midrabanan? Yes, you do. But if you didn't uproot it, according to the Rambam and other Rishonim, you can eat the product, and that will be the case of the Gemara, which is a little bit strange because normally we don't speak out halachas for avaryanim, but that's the way we're going to learn the Gemara. So again, if rule number 1, you only had in mind Lezera, when you have only in mind Lezera, everything is determined after the year that it was planted, even though now v'nichnas hashminis, ben izaroi ben yarka yasur, that's an application of rule number 1. Rule number 2, again, of the Brais of Sheish Midos Amr Chachamim Bepula Mitzri, if you only had in mind Yerek, right, so the whole thing has a status of a vegetable, Lifnei Rosh Hashanah Hashminis, means you planted it taka wrongfully, sinfully on the 7th year, and you did not uproot it, V'nichnas Hashminis, and now it's the 8th year. Here the halacha will be Bein Zaroi, Bein Yarkoi Muter, because since you are harvesting it on the 8th year, so everything has a status of b'shas likutoi isurei. It's a product of the 8th year. Product of the 8th year may be eaten. That's right. Shouldn't have done it, but you did it. So now here comes rule number 3. If you had both intentions in mind, again, when did you plant it? Before the Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year. Vlad, you shouldn't have done it. Number 2, you have to uproot it. You didn't uproot it. We want to know whether you can eat it. The nichnas hashminis. So if we would have used the same exact rule we had by Maisres, what did we learn? Everything goes after the hashrasha. The hashrasha happened on the 7th year. The din should have been everything is awesome. But now that we learned yesterday that Shvi'is is not like Maisres, that for Shvi'is we separate the Zera and the Yerek by rule number 3. Yesterday we learned it ba'oifen that it's a chumrah. Today it'll be a kula. Here Zara is for sure going to be asur because the seed goes after the hashrasha. Yarkoi will be muted. Now, guys, remember we learned yesterday a machloikes that issue of marasayin. Not only will the yarkoi be muted because by shvi'is we don't say rule number 3. The greens don't lose their identity vis-a-vis dinei shvi'is. Don't forget that the big difference will be that when it comes to maisres, right? When it comes to maisres of vegetables, maisres of all vegetables, including pula mitzri, is only midrabanan to begin with. Here we're speaking about a din doiraisa, the dinim of shvi'is. So therefore we're more machmer. Here the vart is we're going to separate the seed and the green. Now, if the green yesterday is harvested on the 7th year, even if the green, you understand, there we said marasayin. Here there isn't even marasayin because you're harvesting it on the 8th year. Like the Marafulda writes at the end, right around 7-8 lines from the top of the Amid before the new Mishnah, because the Bishminis aim by Afila marasayin, Eitzel Yerech, because the Shchiach lahem. Yeah, everyone has greens that they are harvesting it. No one will know that this was planted in the previous year, etc., etc. So that will be again the nafkemina of shvius and maisres here lekula. Okay, moving on to the new halach. Vegetables are determined by the year they are picked. Why? Because they live. That was the beginning of this whole topic. Just like the Torah was Megala, that when it comes to grains and olives and grapes, that the determinant over there is a shlish. Why a shlish? Because the waters that fall prior to them hitting a shlish become their main source of nourishment. Even though you leave them in the ground for a lot more time, what happens after the shlish vis-a-vis watering is not that important. That is the logic we use for vegetables. Since vegetables always live off and they grow with the current waters, actually a vegetable can be mamash already almost ready. But if it rains, it's going to become a lot bigger. So what's the determinant? Right now, whenever you pick it. So it's connected to the watering and how it gets nourished from the current waters. So the Mishnah is going to give you dafka the following two cases. Dafka says the Mishnah, B'tsalim hasorisim are either a certain type of onions that do not have seeds naturally. They're called sterile onions, asaris, or according to many, that when people would plant onions, some farmers, they would, in the beginning of their development, crush their seeds, and somehow it would allow for that onion itself to grow better, prettier, nicer, juicier. But right now, there's a type of onion that's called B'tsalim hasoris and Pul hamitzri. These are two vegetables that, unlike all other vegetables, that it wasn't common practice by other vegetables to withhold water from them, because vegetables benefit so much from waters, no one withholds them. And if someone withholds water from other vegetables, it's called batla daitoi, and it has no halachic significance. In contrast to these two products only, Salim hasorisim and Pul hamitzri, it was common that for people to withhold in the final 30 days before it's ready, you have to be a farmer, you would not have them watered. Why would you not allow them to have them watered? Because when you do that, they harden, and that's somehow advantageous. You want for them to be harder. Both this type of onion, this I know from onions. If you have an onion that's very mushy, teugnish, you want to have a harder onion, and the same thing with the Pul hamitzri. So he writes like this, that by these two items, Shamana mehem mayim shloishim yoim lifnei Rosh Hashanah, that indeed you withheld water. The act of withholding water right now says you're not treating them like a normal vegetable, which normal vegetables constantly benefit. The vegetable grows from current waters. The moment you demonstrate by a non-action that you're not watering them, that right now for you, the owner, you're not treating them as a normal vegetable. So now the status is that it goes after the hashrasha. But in other words, if you pick it, let's go to Maiseres. So when you pick it on some Gedalia, I'm saying that because Yontav, you're not allowed to pick anything. Some Gedalia, let's say, is the third year. Rosh Hashanah was the third year or the sixth year. Had it been any other vegetable, you would have to give Maiser ani, not Maiser sheni. Since you did not water it for how long? For 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, that changes its status that changes the status of its determinant. Now it goes after Hashrasha. So Hashrasha was the second year. So Misasrim Lisha'avar. And also, if you're going from the 6th year to the 7th year, so Umutarim Bishvis, right? Pashit. Whether we're speaking about Svichim, whether we're speaking about is the product imbued with Kedusha Shvi'is, like not the Rambam, according to the Rash, any vegetable, if it emerged from the ground, even a little bit before Shvi'is, is not asur from Svichim. Okay, it's not asur mishum Svichim, but it has a din. If it would be considered a product of the 7th year, then you can't do schayda with it. Then you have to destroy it by the Zman Habiur. What we say, no, we say that even though you picked it on the 7th year, since for 30 days prior to Rosh Hashanah, you didn't water it, it changes its determinant and goes basar hashrash. But it has to be 30 days. But the imlav, says the Mishnah, then it's a product of the 7th year. So asurim b'shvis, if we're going to go with the Rambam, Svichim, if we're going to go with the Rash, not Svichim, but it's Kedusha, umis asrim l'shana haba'a. Okay, now look inside the Maraful now. There's only one on the Mishnah. Habitzalim, only these two products. That's ki chevra. Habitzalim upula mitzri. Shemana mehem mayim shloishim yoyim. That non-action, I love it. Normally you have to have a maisa. That's already considered a maisa. Yotzu mitroidas yirakas. What's the uniqueness about vegetables? That they are called gedelois al kol mayim. They need water the whole time. And what does it become? The nasa kstei beis habal. Guys, a beis habal means a field that requires no irrigation. Just as a rule, we'll see later what was planted there, what was not planted there. What's the din of something that does not need irrigation? What happens with the din of something that grows in a beis habal shemesapkim al mei gishamim, that they only suffice on rainwaters? Their status over there will be is that we never say basa lekita. Why basa lekita? We say basa rashrash. Hilkach mesasrem l'shavar. Oh, now the Mara folder reminds us of a big thing over here. Let's take a step back over here. What type of pula mitzri are we talking about? Chavra, we just learned that if you planted a pula mitzri lezera and b'negei maisris zera uyerek, anyways misasrem l'shavar. There's no chiddush here. So the Mara folder says, you're right. What case is the Mishnah speaking about? Umayri, pula mitzri, shezra liyerek. Speaking specifically about a pula mitzri that up until now, it only would have been ruled as a vegetable because you planted it for its greens. Because if you planted it for its seed, even if you wouldn't take the water away, that was what we kept on learning. So Gavaldik, so it's a flow that we put together, the Gemara and the Mishnah now. He's just reminding us that the Chiddush is, again, there's something unique about these two products. That's important. Other vegetables, batla daitoi, I don't care what you're doing. These two vegetables, it wasn't that uncommon for people to withhold waters. So it's not a bona fide vegetable, because the reason why by vegetables you go basar, likita, it's because it's gdelois al kol mayim, and they get there and they grow on the current waters. And all of this now changed because of your choice of allowing it to be hard. Now, says the Mishnah, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Again, we are only speaking about the B'tsalim, Hasorisim, and the Pula Mitzri, these two items that the Shel Baal, if these items were planted from the outset, not in a field that is constantly being irrigated, where you're not irrigating it is a demonstration of something, and therefore it changes its status. If it was planted in a baal, it's called a base baal, in a field that doesn't have any human irrigation, and vegetables generally are not planted there, because generally vegetables need constant supplemental watering. So here, anyways, it's not getting water the whole time. Okay, but even items that are planted in a base baal, vegetables that are planted in a base baal, you're going to, at times, there were certain seasons when you would water it. So it's the same idea. We need for those seasons where normally you would have watered it, for you to demonstrate that you're not watering it for reasons you want it to become harder, but the moment you're not watering it, here it's not 30 days, here there's another shiur. But the same concept will apply, that since you did not to water it, kedarkoi, that changes its determinant from likita to hashrasha. What's the determinant? Machloikis tanoi. According to Rav Meir, shemana mehem mayim shtei oinois. You have to withhold water for them for 2 periods. Now, I just want you to know that whatever that shear is, it's more than 30 days. It's more than 30 days. One is not enough. One time people miss. Anything planted in a base baal, somehow that item doesn't need that much water. You planted it in a field that normally suffices only of rainwater. Twice, it's almost like the machloikas chazaka, twice or 3 times. And the chachamim say shalosh. Only if you withheld the water for 3 such periods. It's all about intent, and it's all about how intent in itself is not enough. There has to be an action. It's all about the chiddush that normally an action means a positive action. Here it's a negative action. Normally a negative action is, I don't know where else do you find in halacha negative action, that you're not doing something. You're not doing something, is more than just intent. Your intent is being demonstrated. Vaharaya, you didn't do it. What's in Peah?
It's still logical that you forget.
You mean shikha? Very good. Okay, it's another negative action. Very good. Okay, very good. All right. So first of all, the Gemara wants to clarify what is b'metzias? What's bitzalam hasurisim? What are sterile onions? So it says the Gemara, it's elaine butzlaya that are normally grown in a kfar, kufraya, deloy avdin lezera, that do not produce seed, or where those villagers would themselves destroy the seeds of the onions, they would crush it, because somehow if the koyach of the growth doesn't go into the seed, then the vegetable itself becomes better. Either one, whichever one it is, there is a certain type of onion, again, that it wasn't that uncommon that 30 days prior to harvesting it, you would, if it's planted in a normal irrigated field, you would not water it to make it harder. And again, it becomes like a legume. It becomes like those few items that we learned of, of the rice and the lentil, etc., that you go basar ashrash. Now, and we applied this rule both for maisris and for shvi'is. So again, if you planted it more than 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, even though you picked it in the 7th year, it's going to have a status of a 6th-year product. Since you withheld the water, na'asu kibal, they become like products that are planted in a base bowl. I want you to know that what's normally planted in a base bowl is grain, that's for sure, and certain types of legumes, not your vegetables. Vegetables are generally not planted there. Since you planted in a base bowl, or in our case, since you withheld the water for 30 days, now they become like grain. Now, the truth be told, Chavre, it's not exactly the same, because grain is a shlish. Grain is a shlish. That's not the point. We're not saying that the determinant is exactly the same. We're saying it's no longer a vegetable. By a vegetable, basar lekita, the current year. When did you pick it? It's simple. What year does it belong to? When did you pick it? All of a sudden, you're going back, you're cheshboning. That is what it means. Nasu kabal, it becomes similar to products that are planted in a baseball. Okay. Now, the Gemara asks a question and gives a brilliant answer. Rabbi Yoina boy, you need to have 30 days. So what happens, Vlad, if it doesn't have 30 days? Prior to the end of the 30 days, or let me say differently, after the 30 days, when you're saying, now the determinant change, is it mikanu lahaba or is it lemafreya? Ask Rabbi Yoina, lemafreya ho nasa zera? We're speaking about these two products only. Okay, so now that the 30 days pass and you did not water it, so do we say that retroactively it was never a vegetable, or is it only mikanu lahaba? Or is it only from 30 days on? Now let me say the following, guys. L'may nafkamina. 30 days before Rosh Hashanah. If you harvested something during those 30 days, which is before Rosh Hashanah, the previous year, regardless, Hashrasha previous year, even Lakita. So what will be after the 30 days passes, now, is it only Mikano Lahaba or is it Mafreya Frekti Gemara? My Nafka Mi Beinayin, what difference will it be? Like I explained, because if you harvested it, we're speaking about that which you harvested after 30 days is for sure Basar Ashrasha. You want to know what's the status of that which you harvested during the 30 days. So it's now that the 30 days pass, did it retroactively? Who cares? Even if it didn't change the status of that which you harvested, lemafreya, you harvested it before Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara gives a gavaldic answer. Let me tell you the nafkamina. The nafkamina is not about Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani. The nafkamina is not about 6th year or 7th year or 7th year or 8th year. No. We're not allowed to be toidim u'ma'aser, one type of product on another type of product. Apples on apples, oranges on oranges. Vegetables and legumes are not the same product. That's the word. So when I harvested some of these pula mitzris during the 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, then I harvested some of the after the 30 days after Rosh Hashanah. Since I withheld the water 30 days, even if it's only mikanu lahaba, that which I harvested, basarash rasha, everything will be considered of the previous year. But if lemafreya, it retroactively changes the status, everything is considered a legume, everything is considered an item that goes basarash rasha, then I can mix both together and I can tie them together because they're both the same species. If mikanu lahaba, that's the nafkamina of the look at yeah, the nafkamina will be that if you harvested some within the 30 days, we know that. So even if it's still considered a vegetable, it's still a previous year. You harvested it before Rosh Hashanah. And then you harvested further some more of the same plantation. That you're withholding, it changed the status retroactively. So then everything is considered, like, let's call it like the rice and like the rice. And therefore, ma'aser mizelzeh, because they share the same classification, they are the same product. Even though both of them, you'll only have to give ma'aser sheni. If you go now that 30 days pass and you harvested a taka, both of them will be ma'aser ani. But the point in afkamina will be is ein ma'aser mizelzeh. Why? Because if it's only mikanu lahaba, that which you harvested prior to Rosh Hashanah is called a vegetable. A vegetable that you harvested in the second year. What you harvested after Rosh Hashanah is like rice. And a chanami basar ashrasha, it's a product of the second year, but it's rice. Rice and a vegetable you cannot be traded ma'aser from one on the other. That is why he asked that question, and the question over here is not resolved. In other words, is 30 days a birur or a kiyum? A de birur, a de kiyum. If you lend me money, I owe you the money right away. Witnesses are only to prove to others that I owe you the money. By Kedushin, if there aren't Adam witnessing the act of the Kedushin, my action of giving a woman a ring is not a Kedushin. In other words, is what changes the determinant, the kavana. Elama, how do you know the person had kavana? So the withholding the water for 30 days is megale, it's a birur. You understand? That indeed the person changed his intention. He doesn't look at it the way he looks at the vegetables. Or we say no, that it's not just a birur. For him to change its determinant, there has to be something that's done. I know it's a negative, don't water it. But prior to it being done, it wasn't, there's no change. So therefore, the 30 days only affects mikanu lahaba. Okay. And now, moving on today to the third Mishnah, to Allah Chazai. And this Mishnah, like we mentioned in the introduction, has two very different dinim. All right, we begin with gourds. Gourd has, like we mentioned in the words of introduction, something unique, and that is that even though gourds are considered a vegetable, gourds are normally going to be determined based on the year in which they were picked, kedin kol vegetables. However, there is something about a gourd that sometimes the farmers would not harvest it when they are ready. And what happens to the gourd when it's not picked, when it's ready to be picked? It starts to shrivel. Why would the farmer allow shriveling to happen? Because he doesn't care about the vegetable. If you only want the gourd for its seed, you take a leave it on the tree. So just like the non-watering is an indication for what you want it for, you have a similar idea when it comes to the gourd. And that's the Mishnah. That hadiluyin, when it comes to gourds, they grow on vines. Shekinman lizera. Shekinman lizera means that you did not harvest it when it was mature. And that's a proof by your non-action that you don't want the gourd, because why would the gourd is becoming smaller? It's shriveling. You only want it for the seed. For the seed doesn't make a difference. So how much does it have to shrivel for you to say, aha, it's no longer a vegetable, it's a seed? Lamai nafkamina, again, what year will be the determinant? So before, in the previous Mishnah, we had 30 days in a irrigated field, and in a baseball, machlokes Rav Meir and the Chacham, how many seasons? Here we have a different type of determinant, not an amount of time, but it's more like an individual siman. How hard did that gourd become before Rosh Hashanah? What do I mean by hard? Hard that a human being can no longer eat it. Then it's no longer food. Then it's no longer a vegetable. So im hukshu lifnei Rosh Hashanah, if you left it so long on the vine without harvesting it, that it became hardened, all right? V'nifsalu me'oichel, v'nifsalu me'oichel, that's the key over here. I want to say it like this. All gourds that a human being cannot eat could be given to animals. Animal foods are subject to the dinim of shvius. Nevertheless, that's the word. The word is that mutal l'kaiman b'shvius. Mutal l'kaiman b'shvius means now that you left them on the tree so long, before Rosh Hashanah. Means before the 7th year began. So before the 7th year began, its determinant changed. Normally, the determinant will be when you pick it. It's a vegetable. Now that it became so hard, now we don't view it as a vegetable. We're going back to what we had in the previous Mishnah. We go back to what we had 2 Mishnayos ago. That if it's not a vegetable, what would be the other determinant? The hashrasha. Way back, the hashrasha happened in the 6th year. It's a product of the 6th year. If it's a product of the 6th year, mutal l'kaiman b'shvius. I want you to know that seeds of any item of the 7th year, let's speak of apples, right? Apple is not tzvichim because it's residual. I can pick an apple of the Shemitah year and I can eat it. You know what I cannot do? I cannot save its seeds. B'chlal. Everything on the Shvius year, you can consume it in small amounts completely. You don't store it. Seeds normally are stored, just to know. So the word over here is you can store it. Us mutar l'kaiman means you can keep it for the 8th year. You can treat it the way you would treat seeds of the 6th year, of the 5th year. And it's not Shemitah seeds. But the imlav, even though you left it on the tree, even though it began to shrivel up, that's the shear, but it did not become hard enough before the Shemitah year in order for you to say that people cannot eat it. People cannot eat it. So now the gourd did not change halachically from it being classified as a vegetable. Vegetable is basar likuta yisurai. We said it's not fit for human consumption. It doesn't matter. It's fit for animal consumption. It's still included in the dinim of shvius because it's a product of the 7th year. Beautiful. Now another detail. What is Vlad beautiful? No. Now the Mishnah says something else. Now these gourd trees have what the Mishnah calls a tamara. Now there's a big machlokes exactly. Either it's some sort of bud that grows from the gourds or from the vines, or it's some sort of leafy shoot that grows from the tip of the stem. You have to understand plants. There's a certain part of the gourd that's called a tamara. No, the tamara is not just what you think is a tamara. Tamar, right? A date. So here we go. What's the lashon we have by the Hadassim? Also,
yeah, we learned that it's the top of the lulav.
Yeah, that's for sure. Top of the lulav, because a lulav is a tamar tree. But I know that we have the expression little dates, little buds when it comes to other plants. Anyways, we're speaking about a gourd, and they have on them tamaros. So we're saying over there that unlike the gourd itself, that if the gourd remains on the tree when it's ripe and it's not picked, it hardens. So normally when the farmer wants to eat it, he would not leave it unharvested. So his not harvesting it demonstrates he wants it lezera. The other part of the gourd tree, which is the tamaros, Since they don't harden if you leave them on the tree, they continuously have the status of a vegetable. Makes no difference the fact that the gourd became hard before Rosh Hashanah. That's the meaning, Vlad, that hatamari shalahem remain asuras b'shvius. If you pick them on the 7th year, they will continuously have the status of a vegetable. Here again, like the Pula Mitzri, one plant can have 2 classifications. Doesn't bother me. The gourd that became hard now has a din of a zera, basically. The tamarais of this gourd vine, we continuously has a din of a vegetable. Ending. So this ended the topic of the gourds. To a certain degree, it really closed the whole discussion. It closed the whole topic of the oiris and the doichen, all of the exceptions. Now we're going on to a new topic, and the new topic is the Seder is amazing, because ad Amosai, guys. Really, let's go back to the bigger picture. What we began to learn about plowing before Shavuos, before Pesach, right? We began to learn about before Shvi'is. Now we are moving. Then we had a big discussion of the determinant. What year does something belong to? Now we're going to speak about an actual avoida, which I can't use the word avoida, watering. It's unique, like we mentioned. The Torah says in Parshas Bahar, the Torah gives you 4 specific activities that you cannot do. And almost everything else is asur. We even use the word avos and tuldos. We said this when we began the Masechta. Unlike by Shabbos, where avos and tuldos are both asur midoraisa. Chayev chatos b'shoigig, or chayev skila b'mezid. We don't even say that. By Shvi'is, it's not. We use the same words avos and tuldos, but they have a very different meaning. Which is, like the Rambam, we read at the Rambam a few times, that which the Torah says explicitly not to do may not be done. That's where you get malchus. That's where you're violating the law. And other agricultural works generally are asur midrabanan. They're asur midrabanan, but you're not going to get malchus. You're going to have malchus marduson. And what is unique is with watering. So let's begin. First of all, look at the words of the Mishnah. Meraptzim. Meraptzim does not mean to water. Means to sprinkle. Big difference. I don't know yet. What is the line? This is not sprinkling, this is watering. I don't know. But there's a concept of really watering, a lot more water, and sprinkling. Now, afar lavan, white soil, is another way the Mishnah uses the word sedei lavan. Guys, just remember. Sedei lavan, whenever you have in the Mishnah, sedei lavan, when we want to differentiate between orchards, residual, versus grains and legumes, the grains generally is called sedei lavan. We said 2 things why it's called sedei lavan. I'll mention again. Either because by grains, actually, there was a time where the color goes to whitish, goes from green to white, or they call it yellow. So it's called a sedei lavan. But the main reason that most of the Shainim bring is because it is not an orchard. Trees give shade. So it's a darkened field. L'mal yusa. You're not baking in the sun. Sedei lavan means a non-orchard. So says the Mishnah. If you have a sedei lavan can generally survive without human irrigation, which Bahashgacha Pratis we just learned today. This day bal, that normally, we just had this on Amud Aleph, normally is used to plant grains and legumes. These are fields that can get by without a lot of human irrigation or without any human irrigation. So therefore, the lack of water, something that needs to be watered the whole time, you not watering it is much worse. Sedei lavan, you would argue, doesn't need so much water to begin with. It gets away without that much human irrigation. And enechanami, because of that, to properly water it on Shvi'is is going to be asur l'kula alma, mid'erabanan. The chiddush of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, the leniency is that even though it's a sedei lavan, anyways, there isn't that much human irrigation, but to be merabetz, you are allowed to do it. Merabtzim ba'afar lavan divrei Rab Shimon. How great is that? But that's only Shitas Rab Shimon. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, no, it's asur. In other words, fields that depend on irrigation, we'll get to that later. Even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says you can water it. Like an orchard that needs to get watered every year. If you will not water it, the trees will dry up. You got a problem there. No one, the issur of watering is only midrabanan. The Rabbanan don't want you to lose your stuff. Here, there's a machlokes by stay loving. Now, another din, mimarsin bo'edis b'shvi is steering a rice paddy. Where is Kevan? They used to flood the rice field. When you flood a rice field, it gets very muddy, and they would actually stir the mud. Now, obviously, we're speaking about rice. I want to make it clear. We're speaking about rice that took root. We just learned this. We're not speaking about rice that took root after Rosh Hashanah. That's asur. We're speaking about a rice that the oidus and doichen, they go after Hashrasha. You planted the rice field, that's 2 mishnayos ago, before they took root, it's really a product of the 6th year. So again, the question will be watering. So the watering to enhance growth will be asur, even though it's a product of the 6th year. On the 7th year, you don't enhance the growth. But a product that's not inherently problematic because it's a product of the 6th year, to do an activity that will prevent it from it getting dried out is something that's permitted. And that will be the way to word it. That Rabbi Shimon holds, again, Rabbi Shimon is the lenient opinion, that memorsin bo'edis b'shvis, you are allowed to stir these muddy rice paddies on the shvi'is year, as long as the rice took root before shvi'is, divrei Rabbi Shimon. Aval, even Rabbi Shimon agrees, loy mechaschin. Mechaschin means you can't trim the rice plants, which is somehow clipping the leaves. Clipping the leaves stimulates growth. Even though it took root in the 6th year, doesn't matter. I can't do an activity on the 7th year that will stimulate growth on the 7th year. No, it's not midoraisa. Very good. Trimming the leaves is not midoraisa. Even though the Torah says pruning, it's not this. It's nishdos. Vlad is making a good point. We have to be speaking of all isurim midrabanan. Since something is asurim midrabanan, so therefore watering is unique. It's amazing. On an orchard, you can water. You can water on trees because they need the trees. I know by me, I did some work in the backyard and they shut off the water. One tree died. Trees need watering. But that's for sure. The Mishnah is speaking about a baseball. Stay lovin. Same thing. Stay lovin means a field that normally, b'chlal, you don't have human irrigation. Whatever is used there doesn't need that much watering. So Rabbi Shimon says, watering, no, but meraptzim, yeah. Sprinkling. Rabbi